Hi, I'm Caitlin. I'm making a short documentary film and I've got no idea what I'm doing. So thanks for joining me on this journey. So a bit of a recap of my week and the activities that I set for myself. I went to two events. One was a webinar conversation with filmmaker Cristal Sotomayor of Sotomayor Productions, and the other was a showcase of short documentaries by the Video Consortium, and I also followed a bunch of different creators online. So I've been seeing a lot of cool how-tos throughout the week. So the webinar conversation with Cristal Sotomayor was really cool to sort of see someone who is successful in their own right, but really talk about what it was like from the beginning and sort of the hurdles and the things you need to think about, well, things that are obvious in hindsight, I guess, when starting out and making films. So from starting where I am now, it was really nice to sort of go back to the beginning for someone like that. And they talked about one of their films called Expanding Sanctuary, which is about a Latina community leader in Philadelphia and her campaign to stop the Philadelphia police sharing information with ICE. And Cristal was talking about, I guess, some of the things that they would do differently when starting out making a documentary film. So they were pretty candid about the fact that they were just out of college when they made the film, and they teamed up with an organization in Philadelphia to sort of follow this campaign leader around, and maybe didn't do a lot of pre-production planning and dove right into the filming part of the process. So I guess they got a bit overwhelmed with the amount of filming that they were doing, trying to capture every moment instead of probably planning out the process and seeing what storylines needed to be hit at what point. So it's really interesting hearing about some of those learning curves through other people's experiences. So I took a lot from that conversation and it was great. And I think it's a good reminder to just start where you are, and you're gonna be a beginner at something at some point. And I think sometimes we hold ourselves to these expectations, whether it's because we're older or we're just naturally good at things. So when you get to a point where you're starting to learn something from scratch and you're not good at it, or it doesn't meet your expectation or level of polish that you would normally have, I think it can be difficult, speaking for myself. But I think it's kind of fun to see and record this process, to look back and think about what could be done better next time. So sort of why I'm doing this. So it was cool to hear from Cristal and hear those stories. So the Video Consortium, they showcased 3 different short films, and they were all on the topic of refuge, but were really diverse and contrasting to each other and the idea of what refuge is. I studied migration studies, so my mind immediately goes to asylum, and there were, topics like that in the films, but it kind of diversified how people find refuge or where they find refuge in community for whatever they need refuge to be. 3 films were called La Orquestra, I Take Refuge, and We Still Love Here. I'll just read from the event description about each of the films. So in La Orquestra by Stephanie Liu, she follows a retired music teacher set out to create a youth orchestra in Georgia, the first of its kind for undocumented and mixed status families. In I Take Refuge by Priyanka Suryani, a visionary and charming Buddhist monk from Nepal leads one of the Bay Area's largest Tibetan monasteries and worries about the future of this vital community sanctuary. In We Still Love Here by Sean Havey, die-hard fans mourn the loss of community and tradition with wisdom and humor at the last home game of the Oakland Athletics. So the diversity of these films sort of showcased the theme of belonging and belonging somewhere. And I thought the contrast was really beautiful in how they demonstrated that sense of belonging. And I was actually really surprised about the connection and emotion I felt with the film about the Oakland A's. I'm not a sports fan, so I think it was really interesting to see the level of depth and emotion from these people who are so connected to their local sports team and what it meant to lose that, and the traditions in their families and the communities. So that was really interesting to me. I like that. It's not something I would usually think about. So it got me thinking, which was cool. At the screening, they had a Q&A with the filmmakers, and there were some really compelling questions in thinking about starting out storyboarding and bonding, making connections with the characters that will be in the films. And it was interesting, the different answers across filmmakers, because Stephanie Liu, who made La Orquestra, talked about how she and her production partner were in conversations and connecting with the community in Georgia for a whole year before they even picked up a camera. And you know, it's a sensitive topic when you're dealing with mixed status families and children as well. So you have to think about safeguarding in different kinds of ways. Whereas the other film, Priyanka was talking about how she was filming for an entire year. So she became like a fixture in that community where people expected to see her at every event. And that was a really cool thing to hear. But it was also really funny because Sean Havey, who filmed We Still Love Here, was talking about how he got the idea for the film 2 weeks before the last home game of the Oakland A's. So, I mean, it's a very different topic, obviously, but it was interesting to see that the most vulnerable interviewees were the ones at the Oakland game, and maybe it was the alcohol that was flowing, but he was talking about how he had only built a connection with people for as little as 20 minutes before the cameras were pulled out to film. But I think people were really keen to have that documented moment, and it was really beautiful and very emotional. So, I mean, it really goes to show, I guess, depending on the topic that you're dealing with, how quickly or how slowly you need to make connections with people and build that trust. So that was an interesting takeaway. Another question was about storytelling, and I guess someone asked how they approach storytelling, and Stephanie Liu had a really interesting answer about a spiral method of storytelling, which I had only really heard of in therapy, which I guess is also a type of storytelling, but it's sort of like a non-linear way to kind of spiral through a story and dig deeper and see it from different perspectives around the spiral as you're going deeper in a non-linear fashion of storytelling. And I think she really showcased that in her film. She really demonstrated show, don't tell, and put the audience in an observational seat where you're shown a situation and you just have to put two and two together about what's happening instead of directly or over explaining the situation at hand, which I thought was really cool. And the way she answered the question about storytelling really came across in the film. So I think it was very thoughtful, and I think having a year before pulling out the cameras and really thinking about that pre-production process was really valuable in this instance. So that kind of leaves me still on the storytelling topic and thinking about storytelling in different ways and through different cultures. I think when I think about Western society and I think about Hollywood, we have a very formulaic way of telling a story that we're all very used to and expect when we go to the movies. And you know, you have your desire, you have your conflict, you have your resolution, and you have your result. And I think sometimes it can get a bit predictable, or at least I think when you have strong pattern recognition, you might find yourself guessing the ending, which is, you know, a game in itself and everything has its place. But I'm trying to think about different modes of storytelling, and I guess it would differ from fiction and non-fiction, because in documentaries where it's non-fiction, you're literally talking about someone's life. So, but I guess there's different ways of showcasing it. So that's what I'm thinking about right now. And also this week, I started the process of interviewing my upstairs neighbors, which I'm really excited about. And I'll share a bit more about that in a different video. But for now, thank you for listening to my TED Thoughts. And I'll be back with another video, hopefully next week. Okay, bye.